Picture this. You bury your mother on a Tuesday. By Friday, there's a bulldozer ripping up the forest your great-grandfather planted in 1885. Not a mistake, not a misunderstanding. The HOA president, let's call her Diane, pulls up in her white Lexus, window down, smirking. She waves a construction permit at you like it's a royal decree. 12 luxury villas, $4 million, your land. Most people would have called the cops that day, gotten an injunction, stopped them cold. I did the opposite. I let Diane and her crew pour every foundation, frame every wall, install every marble countertop and infinity pool, 95% complete. Then I walked into court with a deed older than her great-grandparents and took it all. Here's my question. Have you ever wanted to destroy someone who thought they were untouchable? Drop yes in the comments and tell me what state you're in, because I know your HOA has tried this too. My name is Eli Brennan. 47 years old, cartographer by trade, divorced because my ex-wife said I never react fast enough. She wasn't wrong. I'm methodical. Surveyors measure twice, cut once, but when someone steals from you, sometimes patience is the sharpest weapon you've got. The land we're talking about? 18 acres of mixed hardwood forest in Shenandoah County, Virginia. Comparable properties in the area sell for $500,000. Easy. Mine had road access, water rights, and timber worth another 80 grand. My great-grandfather, Samuel Brennan, bought it in 1885 for $200 and a mule. He logged it selectively, never clear-cut, always replanted. My grandfather tapped maples for syrup every spring. My father kept bees. My mother, God rest her, turned it into a mini sanctuary. No hunting, no machines, just foxes, barred owls, and the occasional black bear passing through. The scent of wet oak bark after a rain. The crunch of hickory nuts under your boots in October. That was home. Mom moved to assisted living in Ohio 3 years back. Her lungs couldn't handle the pollen anymore. But she kept paying the property taxes, kept the land in the family. When she died in early April, the will was simple. Everything to me. No siblings to fight over it, no liens, no drama. I spent 2 weeks in Ohio handling her affairs, funeral on a Tuesday, paperwork until Thursday. Drove back to Virginia late Friday afternoon, thinking I'd spend the weekend walking the property, maybe scatter some of her ashes near the creek. Instead, I got diesel fumes and a countdown beeper. The smell hit me before I even got out of my truck. Thick, oily, wrong. Then I heard it. Beep, beep, beep. That aggressive reverse alarm that sounds like the end of the world on a timer. I pulled onto the access road and saw orange construction fencing wrapped around the southeast quadrant. 8 acres, maybe more. 2 excavators. A concrete truck idling, and fresh foundation slabs, 4 of them poured and curing, marked with stakes. Ridgeline Estates, Phase 1, 4 slabs. I didn't know it yet, but the survey map posted on the fence showed 12 villa plots. They were just getting started. I parked, walked up to the fence. A foreman in a neon vest saw me coming. "Help you, ma'am?" he said. I didn't correct him. "Long hair, I guess. Doesn't matter." "This is my land," I said. He squinted. "No, sir. Sorry. This is a permitted Laurel Ridge development. You'll need to talk to the HOA. Before I could respond, I heard the purr of a luxury engine. A white Lexus RX rolled up, window sliding down with that soft hydraulic hiss. Enter Diane Corrigan, early 50s. Blonde highlights that cost more than my truck payment. Athleisure outfit, oversized sunglasses, smile sharp enough to cut glass. She was the president of Laurel Ridge Community, the subdivision that sprouted up next to my land between 2019 and 2022. 200 cookie-cutter homes, an HOA with more rules than the IRS, and Diane at the helm. She was also a real estate agent. Conflict of interest didn't seem to bother her. She looked me up and down like I was a stray dog. "Can I help you, sir?" Polite, patronizing, practiced. "This is my land," I repeated. "Brennan family land, has been since 1885. Her smile didn't waver. "I think there's been some confusion. Our legal team handled the acquisition through a tax lien foreclosure last fall. Everything's above board. If you have concerns, you're welcome to submit them in writing to the HOA board. We meet the 3rd Thursday of every month." She reached through the window, handed me a glossy brochure. Ridgeline Estates, luxury mountain living, renderings of 12 villas, infinity pools. Tagline, sustainable community living in harmony with nature. The irony of that sentence, printed over images of my bulldozed forest, almost made me laugh. Then she rolled up her window and drove off, didn't wait for a response, didn't even pretend to care. I stood there holding that brochure, watching her taillights disappear down the access road. Then I got back in my truck and did what any surveyor would do. I checked the records. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, I pulled up the county land records. Owner of parcel 14-009, Eli Brennan. Date recorded April 15th, 10 days ago when Mom's will cleared probate. No sale, no transfer, no tax lien, nothing. My coffee went cold while I stared at the screen. Outside, I could still hear the faint hum of a generator from the construction site, half a mile through the trees. Diane had lied. The tax lien foreclosure didn't exist. She'd built on my land, used fake paperwork to get a permit, and thought I'd be too confused or too broke to fight back. She was wrong on both counts. I sat back in my chair, listening to the creek burble in the darkness, and made a decision. If Diane wanted to play land grab, I'd let her. I'd let her dig her own grave, literally. Every dollar she poured into those villas was a dollar I'd take from her in court. I smiled for the first time since Mom died. Let them build. Day 2, I was back on site at sunrise with my camera. Date-stamped photos, GPS tagged, every foundation slab, every survey stake, every piece of equipment. 12 villa plots in total, plus a clubhouse and a community pool. I counted them twice. Methodical, remember? The crews were just arriving, thermoses in hand, and they gave me curious looks but didn't stop me. I wasn't trespassing on a construction site. They were trespassing on my land. By 9 a.m., I was at the county courthouse pulling records. The clerk, a woman named Brenda who looked like she'd been behind that desk since the Carter administration, barely glanced up when I asked for my deed. Parcel number? 14-009. She pecked at her keyboard with 2 fingers, squinted, then shuffled to a filing cabinet that probably predated the computer. 5 minutes later, a photocopied deed, recorded 1885, updated 1957, transferred to me April 15th. Clean, unbroken, mine. How did someone get a building permit on my parcel without proving ownership? I asked. Brenda shrugged. If they submit a title report and it clears initial review, we issue the permit. We don't litigate ownership. That's civil court. I'd read about cases like this. Developer submits sketchy paperwork, county processes the forms, and by the time the real owner notices, there's a foundation in the ground. Turns out governments don't verify who owns the dirt. They verify who claims to own it. Big difference. I sent an email to the Laurel Ridge HOA board that afternoon. Subject: unauthorized construction on parcel 14-009. Attached my deed. Professional, direct, demanded immediate halt. 12 hours later, Diane replied. Not the board, just her. CC'd to Mitchell Hogarth Esquire. The lawyer's email signature had more fonts than a ransom note. Mr. Brennan, our records indicate Lot 47B was lawfully acquired via tax lien foreclosure last November. You may own a similar property. Surveying errors are common in rural areas. We're happy to meet, but construction continues per our approved timeline. Best, Diane Corrigan, President, Laurel Ridge HOA. I read it 3 times. Lot 47B didn't exist. I'd surveyed every parcel in this county. There was no 47B, no tax lien, no foreclosure. My taxes were paid through 2027. Diane was gaslighting me, planting doubt, hoping I'd second-guess myself. Maybe you missed something. Maybe you're confused. I wasn't. My coffee went cold while I stared at that email. Outside, a chainsaw roared to life. They'd started clearing for villas 5 and 6. Day 4, my neighbor Ron knocked on my door. Ron's a good guy. Drives a Ford older than mine, waves when you pass him on the road. But that evening, he looked uncomfortable. You seen the Laurel Ridge Facebook group? I hadn't. Didn't even know it existed. He showed me his phone. Private group. 400+ members. Diane's post from that morning. Heads up, neighbors. An individual is claiming our expansion violates his property rights. Our legal team confirmed everything is legitimate. But he's become aggressive toward contractors. Report suspicious activity. Let's keep our community safe. 65 reactions. Angry emojis aimed at me. Comments. Some people just want attention. Call the cops if he shows up. Ron scratched his neck. Don't shoot the messenger, man. Appreciate it, I said, and I did. At least one person wasn't buying Diane's spin. That weekend, I hired a private surveyor. $1,800 I didn't want to spend, but I needed ironclad proof. 2 days later, he handed me a report with iron pins and orange flags marking every corner of my land. Verdict. All 12 villas, the clubhouse, and the pool sat entirely on my property. Not a boundary dispute. Not ambiguous. Trespass. I took it to Martin Geist, my semi-retired lawyer, old family friend. He read the report and grinned like a wolf eyeing a henhouse. Eli, I can file an injunction today. Stop construction. Make them tear it down. Or you let them finish. Every dollar Diane pours into concrete and drywall becomes a dollar you claim in damages. Completed structures are easier to value and easier to take. I thought about my ex-wife's favorite complaint. You never react fast enough. She wanted yelling, table flipping, immediate action. But 20 years of surveying taught me something. The person who moves first doesn't always win. Sometimes you wait. You document. You let the other side commit fully to their mistake. Then you bury them in it. Let them build, I said. That night I sat on my porch with Old Forester, Dad's brand, listening to nail guns echo through the trees. Thunk, thunk, thunk. Somewhere in the dark, Diane's white Lexus crept past my driveway. Didn't stop, didn't wave. I raised my glass. Cheers, Diane. Dig deeper. Week 2, Diane tried to buy me off. A certified letter arrived in a cream-colored envelope so thick I thought it was a wedding invitation. Mitchell Hogarth's law firm embossed in gold foil across the top. I opened it with a butter knife. Dear Mr. Brennan, to resolve this matter efficiently, Laurel Ridge HOA offers to purchase your adjacent 10-acre parcel for $85,000. This represents fair compensation for unimproved land and includes a mutual confidentiality agreement to protect both parties' interests. Please respond within 7 business days. I had to read it twice. $85,000 for land worth $500,000. Adjacent parcel, as if their villas weren't actively sitting on my dirt. And the confidentiality clause? That meant take the pennies, sign away your right to ever talk about it, and let Diane parade around like she'd done nothing wrong. I wrote back the same day, kept it short. Mr. Hogarth, I decline your client's offer to purchase land I already own. Construction on parcel 14-009 remains unauthorized. Regards, Eli Brennan. Martin taught me that in legal fights, whoever stays calm on paper wins. Let the other side lose their cool first. While Diane was trying to silence me with hush money, I was building something better. Allies. It started at the Cornerstone Diner, eggs, toast, coffee that tasted like burnt rubber. A woman at the next table leaned over. You're the Brennan boy, aren't you? Silver hair in a bun, glasses on a beaded chain, sharp eyes. Yes, ma'am, Eli. Marge Tully. Your great-grandfather sold timber to my granddad in the 20s. She smiled. Heard you're tangling with that HOA woman. I might be able to help. 2 days later, I was in her basement surrounded by cardboard boxes that smelled like mothballs and forgotten decades. Marge handed me a rolled parchment, yellowed and delicate. 1894 plat map, your great-grandfather's land. I unrolled it carefully. There were my boundaries, drawn in faded ink, perfectly matching my modern survey. But there was something else, a dotted line cutting across what was now Laurel Ridge's main entrance. Right of way, Marge said, easement for timber hauling. Never formally vacated, far as I know. I'd read about a case in West Virginia where a forgotten logging easement shut down an entire subdivision because the developer never checked old records. Easements don't expire just because nobody's used them. They're like property rights in hibernation, waiting for someone to wake them up. If this easement still existed, I could block Diane's access to her own neighborhood if I needed to. Marge, I said, you just gave me a nuclear option. She grinned. Thought you might like that. The next ally found me at a gas station 3 days later. Guy in a dusty work vest, late 30s, sunburned and exhausted. Ray Booker, foreman from the construction site. You're Eli? He said quietly, glancing around. Yeah. Ray, Summit Contractors. Look, I don't know what the hell's going on, but Diane's paychecks are bouncing. My crew's ready to walk. If you're really the owner. He hesitated. I need to know which side of this I'm on. I pulled my deed from the truck's glove box. I'd started carrying it everywhere and showed him. Ray studied it, then the construction site photos on my phone. His jaw tightened. Son of a bitch, he muttered. Then he handed me a folded budget sheet from his pocket. $4.2 million total. She's pre-sold 6 villas for $850 to $1 million each. If this project dies, she's buried. When I win, I said, I'll make sure you get paid, and I'll need a crew to clean up whatever disaster she leaves. Ray shook my hand. Hard. Deal. That evening, an email arrived from someone named Kevin Lassiter, HOA board member, apparently. Subject: I owe you an apology. The message was long, rambling, filled with Bible verses and self-flagellation. But one line mattered. Diane never showed us a title report. She said her lawyer cleared everything. We trusted her, and I'm ashamed we didn't verify. I sent it straight to Martin. His reply: negligence on top of fraud. Beautiful. Construction hit 40%. Walls going up now. Ray's crew waved when I drove past. They knew. Diane sat in her Lexus under a tree, watching, chewing her nails raw, Let her worry. My side was growing. Hers was crumbling. Week 5, Diane went nuclear. She called the Shenandoah Sentinel, our local weekly, circulation maybe 3,000, and gave them a sob story. The front page ran, "Local HOA battles frivolous land claim." The article quoted her extensively. Painted herself as a community hero, fighting a disgruntled individual attempting to extort the HOA with baseless accusations. She claimed she was a single mother, working tirelessly for affordable housing. I actually laughed at that line. Diane wasn't single. Her husband was a notary public. And those villas started at $850,000. Affordable for who, orthopedic surgeons? But the damage worked. I started getting stares at the grocery store. Someone egged my mailbox. The Cornerstone waitress wouldn't make eye contact anymore. 3 days later, Diane filed for a restraining order, claimed I'd harassed contractors and made threatening statements. All fiction. I had to show up to court with my documentation proving I'd never threatened anyone. Judge tossed it in under 5 minutes. No evidence, no witnesses. But that wasn't the point. The filing became public record. Another headline, HOA seeks protection from aggressive claimant. I didn't respond publicly. Didn't write letters to the editor or rant on Facebook. Instead, I called the Virginia Department of Labor and Industry, anonymous tip line. I'd like to report possible code violations at the Ridgeline Estates site in Shenandoah County. Stormwater runoff into the creek, excavation on unstable slopes, missing safety barriers. I wasn't lying. I documented all of it during my walks. I just made sure someone with a clipboard would actually look. 2 days later, a state inspector arrived unannounced. Spent 4 hours crawling over the site. Found violations. Improper stormwater management. 2 villas built outside the permitted footprint. Inadequate worker safety bonding. Red tags went up on 4 villas. Full stop work order. Cost to Diane, $60,000 in fines, 2 weeks of delays, and a crew sitting idle while she scrambled to fix problems she should have handled from the start. People think regulations are bureaucratic nonsense until they need them. The truth is, if someone's cutting corners, one anonymous phone call can make their whole house of cards wobble. You don't need a lawyer for that. Just a functioning sense of civic duty. Ray called me that night. Don't know who tipped off the inspectors, but Diane's losing it, screaming at everyone, threatening to fire the whole crew. Sounds stressful, I said, deadpan. He snorted. Yeah, real stressful. While construction sat frozen, Diane's pre-sale buyers started panicking. One of them, a lawyer from Richmond, Googled the property and found my deed in public records. He emailed Diane demanding title insurance proof. She stalled, sent vague replies about processing delays. He wasn't having it. 72 hours or he'd pull his $50,000 deposit. Diane accidentally CC'd 2 other buyers on her response instead of BCC. Within an hour, all 3 were threatening to walk. Her construction loan officer started calling twice a day. The walls were closing in. Week 7. 2 in the morning, my truck alarm jolted me awake. I stumbled outside in boxers and boots. All 4 tires slashed, windshield cracked like frozen lightning, spray painted across the hood. Drop it. Standing there in the dark, smelling the rubber and paint fumes, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, genuine fear. Not of Diane, but of what someone desperate enough to do this might try next. I called the sheriff. 40-minute wait. Filed a report, got a case number, knew nothing would come of it. But the next day, I installed 6 trail cameras in the trees. $900, worth every penny. 3 nights later, 11:47 p.m., the cameras caught a white Lexus idling on my access road. Driver door open, interior light glowing. A man got out from the passenger side, stocky, baseball cap, carrying a jerry can. He walked toward my property line, then froze when my motion sensor light blazed on. He jogged back, and the Lexus peeled out. I zoomed in on the footage. License plate clear, Diane's car. The man's face partially visible under the cap. Looked like her brother-in-law, a guy named Travis I'd seen at HOA events. I saved the footage, burned it to 3 USB drives. Didn't call the sheriff. Not yet. I wanted Diane to think she'd won this round. Construction resumed after the corrections. 60% now. Roofs, windows, landscaping starting. It was starting to look like a real neighborhood. I drove past every morning, waved at Ray. He waved back, grinning. Diane stopped showing up to the site entirely. Good. Let her hide. The closer they got to finishing, the sweeter the ending would be. Week 8, Marge called me, breathless. Eli, get over here, now. I drove to her house. Found her in the living room surrounded by papers. She looked like a professor who'd just cracked the Zodiac cipher. I FOIA'd the county's tax records, she said. Look at this. She handed me a document dated November. 5 months before construction started. A tax lien foreclosure affidavit filed on parcel 14009, my land. The affidavit claimed $12,000 in unpaid back taxes. It stated the property had been lawfully seized and transferred to Laurel Ridge HOA, Inc., signed and notarized by Jay Corrigan, Diane's husband. I stared at it. My taxes were paid. I have receipts going back a decade. I know, Marge said. That's why this is fraud. The parcel number on the affidavit didn't even match mine exactly. It listed 14009B, a designation that didn't exist in county records. Someone had invented a fake subparcel, claimed fake back taxes, and used it to generate a fake foreclosure. The county clerk had processed it without verifying because the paperwork looked legitimate on its face. Diane had created a phantom title out of thin air, then used it to get her building permit. I sat down hard on Marge's couch. The room smelled like old books and dust, and I could hear Marge's wall clock ticking, each second feeling like a countdown I'd been running against without knowing it. She committed felony fraud, I said quietly. Marge nodded, and she thought you'd never check. The next morning, Ray called. We need to talk, not on the phone. We met at a truck stop off I-81. Ray slid into my booth, glanced around, pushed a folder across the table. Diane's not just stealing your land, he said. She's running a Ponzi scheme. The documents told the story. $4.2 million construction loan. But she'd also pre-sold 6 villas to HOA members for $3.10 million, calling them investment properties. Then she pre-sold 3 villas to external buyers for $2.7 million, calling them primary residences. Same villas, sold twice. When this collapses, Ray said, jaw tight, my crew loses their paychecks. Those families lose their savings, and Diane walks away with $6 million. Unless I stopped her. That night, Martin laid out my options. His desk lamp cast long shadows across his cluttered office, law books stacked like a fortress, coffee mug from 1987. You can sue for trespass, forced demolition, he said, or you invoke Virginia's accession statute. If someone improves your land without permission, you can claim the improvements. You'd own the villas. Just take them? It's centuries-old law. The wrongdoer doesn't get to profit, but you'd be responsible for what happens next. I thought about Diane pocketing millions while Ray's crew went unpaid. Thought about families losing their deposits. Thought about my mother's land torn up and paved over for greed. If I take them, I said, what do I do with 12 luxury villas? Martin leaned back. That's your character test. Diane stole from everyone. You taking what's yours is justice. What you do afterward, that's who you are. The answer came easily. I'd take the villas, but I wouldn't sell them for profit. Veterans housing, affordable rentals, something that actually helped people instead of bleeding them dry. File everything, I told Martin. Quiet title, trespass, fraud charges. I want those villas, and I want Diane buried. He grinned. Now we're talking. Construction hit 75%. Diane sent a final offer, $150,000 plus a public apology from me, as if I was the one who'd done something wrong. I threw it in the trash. Let her finish building. Every dollar she spent was a dollar she'd lose. Every villa she completed was another piece of evidence. The trap was nearly set. Week 10. Martin's conference room smelled like old coffee and legal pads. 3 bankers' boxes on the table, bulging with evidence. Martin stood at the head, sleeves rolled, a yellow highlighter tucked behind his ear like a carpenter's pencil. This, he said, tapping the fake foreclosure affidavit, is Exhibit A. Everything else is napalm. The evidence, my 1885 deed and every update since. The modern survey, Ray's work orders signed only by Diane. Trail camera footage of her Lexus and brother-in-law with the jerry can. Kevin's email admitting the board never saw a title report. Pre-sale contracts promising ownership Diane didn't have. And Marge's 1894 plat map showing the easement across Laurel Ridge's main entrance. Our nuclear option if needed. We file Monday, Martin said. Quiet title, trespass, fraud. We're also notifying First Valley Bank their collateral doesn't exist. Then what? Bank freezes the loan. Diane's got 72 hours before her world catches fire. Martin filed Monday. By Wednesday, it was a media circus. The Sentinel ran it front page. Richmond picked it up. Thursday, TV crews swarmed the construction site. One reporter asked a confused electrician, "Do you know you're working on stolen land?" The guy just shrugged and said, "I'm union. I get paid either way." I almost felt bad for him. Friday morning, First Valley Bank dropped the hammer. Notice of default, loan frozen. 10 days to prove clear title or they'd call the full $3.2 million. Diane couldn't pay that. Nobody could. Her emergency HOA meeting that weekend was closed door, but word leaked. She told members I was trying to steal their project. But people were Googling now, checking records, asking questions. One of those people was Paula Eng. Paula, nurse, early 40s, single mom, had dumped her entire retirement into a pre-sale villa, $220,000. When she called me, her voice shook. I think I've been scammed. We met at Cornerstone. She slid her sales contract across the table, pointed to a clause buried in the fine print. Binding arbitration. Can't sue. And this line here, Laurel Ridge HOA guarantees full title warranty. She looked up. That's a lie, isn't it? Yeah. I talked to 4 other buyers. Same contract. We want in on your lawsuit. By week's end, Paula had rallied 5 scammed HOA members. They hired a lawyer, filed their own fraud suit, and joined my case as co-plaintiffs. Diane wasn't just fighting me anymore. She was fighting her neighbors. When you're facing fraud, you're rarely alone. Find the other victims, pool resources, and suddenly, you're not one person with a lawyer. You're a coalition with momentum. Courts pay attention to patterns. So do juries. Then the marriage broke. Jay Corrigan, Diane's husband, the notary whose stamp was on the fake foreclosure, got subpoenaed. Quiet guy, accountant, probably never wanted any of this. He hired his own lawyer and sent Martin a letter. I'll testify my wife forged documents with my stamp without my knowledge. I want immunity. Martin called me. Her husband's flipping. I sat with that for a moment. A marriage ending because one person's greed finally swallowed everything. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like watching a car crash in slow motion. Ugly, inevitable, and nobody walking away unscathed. But I'd use it. Week 13, final walkthrough. We stood at the construction site. Me, Martin, Marge, Ray, Paula. Villas 90% done. Landscaping in, pool shimmering, clubhouse gleaming. The air smelled like fresh mulch and paint. It looked like a postcard. Courts in 2 weeks, Martin said. Diane will cry, play victim, accuse you of cruelty. You stay stone, let the evidence talk. Ray crossed his arms. My crew's got your back. Half of them want to testify just to watch her squirm. Paula touched my shoulder. We're with you, all of us. I looked at the villas, golden in the late sun. They could have been built the right way. Diane could have asked, could have made an offer. Instead, she chose lies. This isn't revenge, I said. It's a warning. Nobody else should lose their family's land to someone who thinks a nice car and a fake smile put them above the law. Marge squeezed my arm. Your mom kept this land wild for a reason. You're honoring that. The sun dipped below the ridge. Shadows stretched across the construction site like fingers reaching for something they'd never hold. 14 days. I was ready. Week 14 started with Diane's voice on my phone, honey sweet, like we were old friends. Eli, let's be adults. I'll give you 3 villas, free and clear. Sell them, walk away with $1 million. Just drop the suit and sign a little NDA. Silence. I don't want 3 villas, Diane. I want my land back, and I want you out of real estate. The honey curdled. You have no idea who you're messing with. See you in court. I hung up, filed a police report for attempted bribery, got a case number. Documentation matters. 2 days later, Diane's lawyer filed a counterclaim. I'd allegedly forged my own deed, planted false survey markers, harassed contractors. Attached was an affidavit from a handwriting expert. Martin checked the guy out. Hogarth's cousin, not certified. Did his analysis on photocopies. They're claiming your 1885 deed is fake, Martin said, based on a document examiner whose credentials include attended a weekend seminar in 2019. I almost laughed. Almost. Then Diane went on TV. Channel 7 News, 6 o'clock, Diane in a modest dress, tissue in hand, makeup just dewy enough to suggest tears. I'm just trying to provide homes for families, she said, voice breaking. He's weaponizing the system. Honestly, I'm scared. He's been so aggressive. I watched it alone in my kitchen. My coffee went cold. The house was silent except for Diane's voice calling me hostile, dangerous, vindictive. Friday, Martin called. We're doing a press conference, Monday. Courthouse steps. You're going on record. I hate cameras. Diane's winning the PR war. Time to fight back. Monday morning, 10 o'clock. Courthouse steps under a gray sky that threatened rain. Cameras everywhere. Local stations, regional outlets, someone's iPhone on a tripod. The air smelled like wet concrete and someone's cigarette smoke drifting from the parking lot. Martin spoke first. Fraud, trespass, fake foreclosure. Then he stepped aside. My turn. I pulled out the deed, original, sealed in plastic, and held it high. My name is Eli Brennan. My family has owned this land for 140 years. This document proves it. I kept my voice flat, factual. Diane Corrigan built on my property using a forged foreclosure created with her husband's notary stamp. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because property rights matter. The court will decide. Reporters fired questions. I answered calmly. Never raised my voice. Let the facts do the work. By Tuesday, we'd gone viral. AP picked it up. Reddit thread, HOA Karen builds mansions on stolen land. TikTok turned Diane's teary interview into a meme. Someone set it to circus music. Another dubbed it with Curb Your Enthusiasm theme. Comment sections roasted her. Main character energy. Gaslight gatekeep girlboss. The narrative flipped. Diane went from victim to villain overnight. Wednesday, the Laurel Ridge Board held an emergency vote. Diane was sick. Didn't attend. Result 4-0 removal as president. Forensic audit ordered. 48 hours later, the auditor dropped a bomb. Diane had embezzled $180,000 in HOA dues over 3 years, Lexus payments, Caribbean trips, a nose job. The villa project was partly a scheme to replace stolen money. Martin called. She's not just getting sued anymore. Commonwealth's attorney is filing charges. Then the bank moved. First Valley called the loan. $3.2 million due immediately. The HOA couldn't cover it. They were broke after Diane's embezzlement. Bank slapped a lien on the villas and evicted Ray's crew mid-shift. Ray called me, voice tight. 3 weeks unpaid. She won't answer her phone. That afternoon, I wired him $15,000 from my savings. Good faith. More coming after court. Long pause. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. Your crew didn't do anything wrong, his voice cracked. Thanks, man. By Friday, Diane had vanished. House dark, car gone. Neighbors said they hadn't seen her in days. Rumors swirled, fled to Tennessee, checked into rehab, hiding at her sister's. Truth came later. She'd checked into a roadside motel 2 counties over, curtains drawn, surviving on gas station wine and reality TV, waiting for a lawyer to make it all go away. No lawyer could. Construction sat frozen at 95%. Villas empty, silent, windows reflecting nothing but sky. The pool sat full but lifeless. The clubhouse locked. A monument to greed half-built and abandoned. Court in 7 days, week 17. Circuit court. Judge Harlan Meeks presiding. 60-something, former JAG officer, reputation for zero tolerance of bullshit. The courtroom was packed. Me and Martin at one table. Diane and Hogarth at the other. Paula and the Victims Coalition in the gallery with their lawyer. Reporters in the back row, notebooks open, a sketch artist from the Richmond paper. Diane looked thinner, no makeup, gray dress that hung loose. She'd aged a decade in 2 months. Hogarth did all the talking. Your Honor, the 1885 deed presented by Mr. Brennan lacks a modern survey description, creating ambiguity about boundaries. My client acted in good faith based on documentation provided by the county. Martin stood. Your Honor, we have an 1894 plat map matching Mr. Brennan's modern survey exactly. The boundaries have been consistent for 140 years. As for good faith, Mrs. Corrigan's husband will testify she forged the foreclosure affidavit without his knowledge. Judge Meeks looked at Diane. Is Mr. Corrigan present? Yes, Your Honor, Martin said. J. Corrigan took the stand. Mid-40s, pale, wearing a suit that looked borrowed. He wouldn't look at Diane. Martin approached. Mr. Corrigan, did you notarize the tax lien foreclosure affidavit on parcel 14-009? No, sir. But your notary stamp appears on the document. My wife had access to my home office. I kept my stamp in a drawer. I didn't know she'd used it until I got the subpoena. Did she ask your permission? No. Did she tell you she was building on disputed land? No. I thought everything was on HOA property. When I found out, his voice cracked. I'm sorry, I should have checked. He finally looked at Diane. She stared at the table, jaw clenched. No further questions, Martin said. Hogarth tried cross-examination, but there was nothing to attack. Jay was cooperating fully, had immunity, and his testimony was devastating. Next up, Ray. Ray wore clean jeans and a button-down, work boots polished. He sat straight, hands folded. Martin walked him through the timeline. Work orders signed only by Diane. Texts telling crews to avoid that hippie guy. Budget docs showing $4.2 million spent. Bouncing paychecks. Did Mrs. Corrigan ever show you proof of ownership? Martin asked. No, sir. She said it was HOA land. Told us not to talk to Mr. Brennan if he showed up. Did you believe her? Ray hesitated. At first. Then the check started bouncing. Then the state inspector showed up. Then I saw Mr. Brennan's deed. He looked at Diane. I realized we'd been building on stolen land. The judge took notes. Hogarth declined to cross-examine. Paula testified next, showed her contract, the binding arbitration clause, the fake title warranty, explained how she'd scraped together $220,000, her entire retirement, believing Diane's promises. She told me it was a guaranteed investment, Paula said quietly. Safe, legal, I trusted her. 4 other victims gave similar statements. Hogarth objected twice, got overruled both times. Then Diane took the stand. Hogarth's strategy, humanize her, claimed she'd been misled by bad legal advice. Diane started strong. Tears. Apologies. I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought everything was proper. Martin's cross-examination was surgical. Mrs. Corrigan, when did you first see Mr. Brennan's deed? I don't recall exactly. You're a licensed real estate agent. You know how to check property titles, correct? Yes. Did you check the title before filing for the building permit? Long pause. My lawyer handled that. Mr. Hogarth is sitting right there. Did he ever tell you the foreclosure was legitimate? Hogarth shifted in his seat. Diane's voice rose. I relied on documentation. Documentation you created, Martin said calmly. Your husband just testified you used his notary stamp without permission. The county has no record of any tax lien foreclosure. You fabricated it, didn't you? I made a mistake. A mistake? Or fraud? Objection. Hogarth stood. Sustained, the judge said, but the damage was done. Diane broke. I needed the project to work. The HOA was in debt, and I thought if we could just finish the villas, sell them, everything would be fine. The courtroom went silent. She'd just admitted it, on the record. Martin sat down. No further questions. Judge Meeks removed his glasses, pinched the bridge of his nose. I've heard enough for a preliminary finding. Mr. Brennan's title is valid. The foreclosure affidavit is fraudulent. Construction was unauthorized. He looked at Diane. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for damages and remedies. I'm also referring this matter to the Commonwealth's attorney for potential criminal charges. He banged the gavel. Outside, reporters swarmed. Diane shoved through them, hand over her face. Someone's camera caught her stumbling, nearly falling. Hogarth trailed behind, already distancing himself. I walked out with Martin, Marge, Ray, and Paula. We didn't celebrate, just exhaled. 14 days, Martin said. Then it's over. I looked back at the courthouse. Old brick, American flag snapping in the wind. Then the real work begins, I said. 2 weeks later. Same courtroom, bigger crowd, local TV carrying it live. Assistant Commonwealth's attorney Wanda Bledsoe observing for criminal prosecution. Diane sat alone. Hogarth had quietly withdrawn, citing irreconcilable differences with client. She'd hired a public defender. She looked hollow, thinner, hair unwashed. The woman who'd smirked at me from her Lexus was gone. Judge Meeks called the hearing to order. Damages phase, he announced. Mr. Geist, present your case. Martin stood, laid out the numbers on a poster board for the gallery. Trespass damages, $4.20 million. Construction costs, the villas were now mine but built with fraud. Timber loss, $85,000. Mature hardwoods cleared. Emotional distress, $50,000. Conservative, given vandalism and harassment. Punitive damages, $2 million, to send a message. Total, $6.335 million. The public defender, a tired-looking woman in her 30s, stood. Your Honor, Mrs. Corrigan has filed for personal bankruptcy. She has no assets. Punitive damages would be uncollectible. Judge Meeks stared at her. Collectability is not my concern. The law allows punitive damages for willful fraud. I'll rule accordingly. Paula's lawyer moved next. Requested restitution for the 5 scammed buyers. $250,000 total in deposits. Judge ordered Diane personally liable, with the HOA jointly responsible. The HOA's insurance would cover most of it, but the process would take months. Then Wanda Bledsoe stood. Your Honor, based on testimony and evidence, the Commonwealth will file charges against Diane Corrigan for forgery, fraud, and embezzlement. We'll also investigate Mitchell Hogarth for conspiracy. Diane's head dropped. Her lawyer whispered something. Diane shook her head. Judge Meeks looked at me. Mr. Brennan, you've been patient and professional. Do you wish to address the court? I stood. First time I'd spoken in court. Your Honor, I didn't want any of this. I wanted to honor my mother's memory and keep our land the way she left it. Mrs. Corrigan took that from me. She stole from her neighbors. She lied to banks, to buyers, to her own board. I paused. The courtroom was dead silent. I don't want her in prison. I want her to understand what she did was wrong. As for the villas, I'm keeping them, but I won't profit. 6 will go to a nonprofit housing veterans. 3 will be sold, proceeds to a land conservation trust. The last 3 I'll rent affordably to families priced out by developments like Laurel Ridge. I looked at Diane. She was crying silently. That's justice, not revenge. The judge nodded slowly. Mr. Brennan is awarded full title to all structures and improvements. Mrs. Corrigan is liable for $4.2 million in trespass damages plus $1 million in punitive damages, reduced from $2 million due to her financial circumstances. Restitution to victims is ordered. Criminal referral stands. He leaned forward. To the HOA board, hire competent leadership and get a full audit. To lenders and buyers, work with Mr. Brennan's counsel. He's shown more integrity than most. This case is a warning. HOAs are not sovereign entities. Property rights matter. Gavel bang. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed me. Diane fled through a side door, chased by cameras. Outside, 20 minutes later, sheriff's deputies arrived. Arrested Diane on the courthouse steps. Misdemeanor charges pending grand jury indictment for the felonies. I watched from across the street. Diane in handcuffs, head down, being led to a cruiser. No gloating, just sadness. She'd done it to herself. Marge stood next to me. You did good, kid. Doesn't feel like winning. It never does, but you stopped her from doing this to someone else. Diane's Lexus, parked illegally in a loading zone, got towed 30 minutes later. A Laurel Ridge resident ripped down the Ridgeline Estates sign from the entrance and tossed it in a dumpster. The villas sat silent on my land, empty, waiting. I'd won. Now I had to figure out what winning actually meant. 6 months later, late autumn. I stood on the clubhouse deck, now a community center, watching the villas come to life. Villa Block A, 6 units converted to transitional housing for homeless veterans. Partnership with Virginia Veterans Services. Residents learned trades, rebuilt their lives. One guy, Marcus, former Marine, had been living in his car 6 months ago. Now he was enrolled in an HVAC apprenticeship, had a job lined up for spring. He found me at the community center one afternoon. You gave me a home, man. I was done. Now I got a future. We shook hands. His grip was strong, steady. I had to look away for a second. Villa Block B, 3 units sold to a land trust for $2.1 million. Proceeds funded a 200-acre conservation easement on my remaining land, protected forever. No one could ever build on it again. Villa Block C, 3 units rented at $900 a month, half the market rate. Waiting list was 50 families deep. Young teachers, nurses, mechanics, people who kept the county running but couldn't afford what developers were charging. The clubhouse hosted ESL classes on Tuesdays, a food pantry on Thursdays, kids' art workshops on Saturdays. The pool was open to the public all summer. Free. Diane got 18 months in prison plus 5 years probation. Restitution order, $1.8 million, effectively unpayable. She'd serve her time, get out, start over with nothing. Hogarth was disbarred after a bar investigation found he'd knowingly filed false documents. Last I heard, he was selling insurance in West Virginia. Jay Corrigan divorced Diane while she was incarcerated, moved to North Carolina. He sends me a Christmas card every year. We've never spoken. The Laurel Ridge HOA got new leadership. Kevin, the dentist who'd resigned early, came back as president, hired a third-party management company, implemented transparent budgeting. They invited me to a community potluck that spring. I brought venison chili. People were nervous at first, but by the end of the night, we were swapping stories about bad contractors and property tax appeals. Turns out we had more in common than anyone thought. My story went viral in ways I didn't expect. A legal commentary YouTube channel broke down the case. 4 million views. I did 2 Reddit AMAs, shared the legal tactics, accession statutes, anonymous regulatory complaints, FOIA requests for public records. 3 other landowners in Virginia used the strategy to fight HOA encroachments. 2 won settlements. 60 Minutes did a segment on HOA wars, featuring my case. I declined to appear on camera but provided documents. The piece sparked state legislation requiring HOAs to carry liability insurance and submit to regular audits. Small victories, but they mattered. 1 year after the verdict, I hosted the first annual Forest and Family Festival on my land. Open to the public, free admission, 600 people showed up. Maple syrup demos, honoring my father's tradition, kids' nature scavenger hunt, bluegrass band, veterans panel discussion, food trucks, the smell of barbecue and fresh-cut grass, laughter echoing through the trees my great-grandfather planted. Paula brought her daughter, who painted a butterfly on my hand with face paint. Ray and his crew ran a booth teaching basic carpentry to kids. Marge sold her homemade preserves and donated the proceeds to the conservation fund. As the sun set, Marcus, the veteran from the villas, found me near the creek. "Man, this place," he said, looking around. "You could have sold everything, made millions, walked away. Why didn't you—" I thought about my mother, about the land, about what legacy actually means. "Because some things aren't for sale," I said. We stood there as the light faded, listening to the creek, the music drifting through the trees, kids laughing in the distance. Then my phone buzzed. Email from an unknown address. Subject: need your help. Fairfax County HOA doing the same thing. I opened it. A woman named Angela, her elderly father's land. Same scam. Fake foreclosure, unauthorized construction, gaslighting. I sent it over to Martin. His reply: "Here we go again." I smiled. If you've ever dealt with an HOA nightmare, drop your story in the comments. You're not alone. And if you want to see how the Fairfax case unfolds, because justice isn't finished yet, hit that subscribe button. Some fights are worth having. Some land is worth protecting. And some people in white Lexuses need to learn. You can't steal what doesn't belong to you.